You are listening to the Examine Life with Bram Levinson. I don't know how many of you out there have pets, but I grew up in a household where my mother was allergic, or at least that was the story, but she was allergic to animals. And so we never had a dog growing up. We never had a cat growing up. And my mother was specifically allergic to cats. I think it was the saliva, cat saliva. And she would make comments like, and she would make them in a comedic kind of way. She wasn't like Cruella de Vil or anything, but she would make comments like the best kind of a cat is a ceramic or dead one. So that's sort of the vibe that I grew up in when it came to animals. And cut to me moving out into my first place on my own in like the mid 90s. One of the first things I did was I went out and I got a dog. And at that point, I was obsessed with Jack Russell Terriers. And I got a Jack Russell Terrier. His name was Oliver. And I was completely in love with this animal. I just found the whole concept that this animal has its own personality, his own personality, that, I could get to know him. He could get to know me. We were very, very close. He was so cute and affectionate and cuddly and all of those things. And it was sort of the beginning of me beginning to anthropomorphize my animals. They're so human. They're so, sort of attributing human attributes to them. And so with Oliver, it wasn't very hard because Oliver was very, very clearly and specifically a certain psychological profile. I used to say that he was Woody Allen embodied in a dog. So he was a long-haired or sort of like a wire-haired Jack Russell. He was white. And he was nervous pretty much at any moment when he wasn't at home. So when I got a dog, part of me wanting to get the dog was that I could bring the dog with me and, go to my parents' place and sort of torture my mother a little bit. That's not actually true. I didn't mean to torture my mother, but there were moments where, when I first got Oliver, I would bring him to my parents' place and I would just let him free. At first I thought, I need to keep him on a leash. And then I thought, what? Don't be so sort of afraid and freaked out that he's going to do something in my mother's hermetically sealed environment. So I would just let him go. And there was one day when my mom was in the kitchen. She was washing up after a meal. And I passed by the door to the kitchen. I looked in and my mother was at the sink. And Oliver was sitting on the floor right next to her. And she was looking down at him. And she was saying, you're a good boy. You're a good boy. And I thought, oh my God, hell has frozen over. Pigs are flying. It's all happening right now. My mother is actually interacting with an animal, and it doesn't involve knives, and it doesn't involve knives coming out of her eyes. It was really, really sweet. But when I brought Oliver out of our home, out of his environment, he would get crazy, crazy, crazy nervous. And in hindsight, maybe I had something to do with it because I was nervous bringing him out of the environment. I mean, I had been told with Jack Russells that you have to be very careful not to let them off leash because they're very easily distracted and they will just run after whatever's in front of them and they won't come back. They'll just keep going. So I was hyper aware of the potential for me to lose him. I was also very, how can I put this? I was hyper aware of not wanting to fuck up the job of raising this dog. I took it very seriously that the dog was my responsibility. And, even though I didn't have the money I should have had when you get a dog, because, if vet bills come in and, sort of extraneous circumstances occur, the shit's expensive. And by the way, if you want to make a shit ton of money, become a veterinarian, apparently, because the cost to get medical treatment for your dog is so stupidly expensive. And by the way, I'm not trying to insult any veterinarians out there. You're doing an incredible job, and it's something that I find honorable in terms of a profession, but holy fuck is that shit expensive. Anyway, I digress. About 3 days after I first got Oliver, I lived on the corner of a very busy street at an intersection. And I brought him out for a walk, and he was in his, collar and leash. And all of a sudden, he reared his head, he pulled his head out of the collar, and he ran like diagonally across the intersection. And there was traffic. And I watched it happen, and I thought, I have had this dog for like 3 days, and he's going to die. I'm going to watch him get run over. And I felt so horribly that it had happened, even though it was completely beyond my control. He literally did it and bolted. Long story short, he did not get hit by a car. I ran into traffic to get him, and everybody stopped, and, that was, all was well that ended well. But I was hyper aware of the fact that I needed to keep Oliver leashed. And when I brought him outside, I was on high alert. So I'm sure that transmitted to him. But when I would bring him over to like a friend's place or my parents' place, somewhere where I was comfortable, I would let him off leash. And more times than not, he would walk in, spin, shit, and then walk out. I thought, that is so Woody Allen. Just that whole sort of like nervous. He was sort of like an old Jewish man. Do you know what I mean? He would like walk in. He'd be super nervous. He'd like shit on their carpet and then turn around and walk out. And I would have to deal, right? Obviously, like that was my responsibility. So I picked up more dog shit. Well, I've picked up more dog shit in my life than I ever thought I would. But in that kind of context, more times than I needed to. So I got Oliver, and a couple of years later, I had this brilliant, and I'm dripping with sarcasm if you can't figure that out for yourself. I got this brilliant idea that I was going to get another dog. I was going to get another Jack Russell Terrier for Oliver. I was going to get him a companion. Big mistake. So I researched it. And I found out that you should not, with the Jack Russell, you shouldn't get, if you're going to get another one, don't get another one of the same gender. Don't get another one of the same sex. So I thought, okay, I'll get a female Jack Russell. And I went back to the woman, the breeder, who, from where I had gotten Oliver. And after a while, she got back to me and told me that there was a female ready. And that there was a new litter, and I could come up and sort of choose which one I wanted. And I went up, and there were these puppies, and I swear to God, I felt like my heart exploded in my chest. They were so beautiful, and they were so fetal. They were so tiny. And I found this little one. She had a black patch over her eye. She was sort of like the traditional aesthetic for a Jack Russell Terrier. You know, like if you remember HMV, His Master's Voice, the record shop, there was the logo was a little Jack Russell staring up at... what do you call those things? Like not a megaphone, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, look it up. So I found this puppy, and I thought, that's her. I'm going to get her. And I, left because she wasn't old enough to be to go or to be taken away from, her mom yet. And so I came back after 8 weeks or after 7 more weeks, and I picked her up. And in the car ride home, I should have known she was, I could just feel this energy coming off of her that was dark. It was a dark energy. She was not comfortable. She was not happy. And I called her Sally. I don't know where I got the name. I don't remember where I got the name, but I called her Sally. And Sally ended up being the exorcist in dog form. So I brought her in to the house, and there was a way to go about it. I don't remember if I think I had to put her in her crate, let Oliver walk around and smell her. I don't remember the details, but I mean, I did it according to how I was supposed to do it. And long story short, she made Oliver's life a living hell. She was a total maniac. When I went out to walk both of them, I would have them both on individual leashes. If she saw anything with a pulse, if she saw a person, God forbid, she saw another animal, if she saw a bird, she would start screaming. And I swear to God, and it wasn't like just like a screaming like out of nowhere. It would build. It was like a roar, and she would start screaming, and people would look at me, and I would be like, I don't know. I paid for her. I don't know what happened with this one. I'm not sure. She was so fucking embarrassing. And then there was this one day, winter, when I'm walking down the street. Well, I'm on the sidewalk, but walking the dogs, and there's a woman, probably in her 60s, walking towards us. And I wasn't paying attention to what the dogs were doing. They're sort of ahead of me a little bit. The leashes are a little taut. And as this woman passes by me, I'm not looking, but all of a sudden I hear this intake of breath from this woman. And I look over to my left, and Sally is on her two hind legs, and she has this woman's glove between her front teeth. So she's essentially come up on her back legs, gone for this woman's hand, bitten the glove, and trying to take the glove off. And I was like, Sally, like, release, even though I'd never taught her to release. I don't know. I was so embarrassed, and I was so apologetic to this woman. I just thought, what do I do with this, like, exorcist dog? It was insane. That was when we were outside of the house. When we were inside of the house, she made Oliver's life so miserable. There would be moments, if somebody came over, or if I was just playing with Oliver and we were having like a really affectionate time, Sally sometimes would be on the other side of the apartment, and she would run. The second she saw Oliver enjoying life, she would run from the other side of our place, and you wouldn't even see her. It was like a blur, but all you would see is some of Oliver's fur, some of his hair, floating down to the ground. It was like shock and awe. I used to joke that she was part pig, because sometimes she would get a little heavy. She was part pig, part great white shark, because she would attack like that and you wouldn't see it. And then part exorcist. So, there you go. And I want to say 6 years after I got Sally, she went into liver failure, and she passed away before Oliver passed away. And I swear to you, I remember carrying Sally out in like a blanket as I was bringing her to the vet to see what was going on. And Oliver, I looked back, and it was like Oliver was sitting there with a cigarette in his mouth, a lit cigarette. And it was like, he was literally waving, going, okay, bye, bitch. Like, don't come back. And she didn't. And from that moment on, Oliver became a puppy again. Without her in the equation, he became a puppy again. I ended up having Oliver for going on 14 years. And putting him down because he was blind, he was deaf, and he had started to go, I think, a little bit senile. And it was only at that moment where I felt like, okay, now his quality of life is really suffering, because when he went blind, he adapted quite quickly. And when he went deaf, he adapted quite quickly. And it didn't really affect how he was with us, how he found his way around the apartment, none of that. So when I put him down, it was absolutely devastating. Sally was devastating as well, but Oliver really, he took my heart with him. And luckily, a mobile vet came over to our place to do it at our place. So he was at home and he was with us, and it was horrifying and beautiful and horrifying. And I remember shortly after I went to England, and I posted something on my blog about the fact that he had passed away and what he meant to me. And I know a lot of you out there have done the same thing on social media, because I've seen it. And I always feel like when that happens, we feel the need to convey just how much this animal meant to us, just how much this animal was part of the family, just how much this animal's energy was part of our day-to-day life. And it's almost like we're justifying our grief. I think there's a part of us that thinks that those who don't have animals, or have never been in a relationship with animals, domestic animals, don't understand how deep that grief goes, because it goes so deeply. And listen, especially for me, I think I'm an empath, and I can be crazy sensitive. So to lose Oliver, it was almost like for a couple of days I couldn't. In the presence of the grief, the grief won. I could witness it. I could be in its company, but I couldn't. I had to let it be. I had to let the grief happen, and I had to let it work its way through my body. And it was, a lot of crying and a lot of, putting his stuff away. I very quickly I would put his stuff away, because I didn't want visual reminders of everything. It was hard enough with what was going on in my mind and in my heart. But I remember going to England and writing this blog post and feeling like I just had to express the degree of my grief and the degree of my love for this dog. And again, in hindsight, I think that that's probably because we feel like people aren't going to understand it. People don't understand just how deeply the love for an animal that we have shared our life with goes. I don't think that I thought that people would fully understand just how much I love this dog and just how close I was to this dog and just how much our connection meant to me to have this dog in my environment every single day. And unlike a child, there are very few moments of tantrums, and there are very few moments of neediness, and there are very few moments of like, give me your credit card, and there are very few moments of dealing with the tougher aspects of parenting. So, I think it just sort of sweetens the relationship that we have with these animals. Most of them will be affectionate with you. Most of them will be yours. And I don't mean that in a possessive way or proprietary way, but I mean it in I don't know, you have a bond with them that you don't really have with many beings in the world. And so, when I wrote this thing about Oliver, I really just needed to get it off my chest. And for me, writing has always been a way for me to shift what's going on in my life, especially when it's extreme. But in hindsight, I realized that, we do this because we really want people to understand just how much this animal has affected us, just how much the loss is affecting us. And now I have Willow. Many of you have seen Willow on my Instagram account. Many of you know Willow from either coming to my home for coaching and mentoring sessions, or just because you know me socially and, you know me, you know Willow. And Willow is a dog that after Oliver was put down, I had sworn I would never get another dog. I had sworn to myself that I wouldn't be able to do it again. I didn't want to go through that process of putting down an animal and the grief and the horror. And about 6-7 months later, I woke up one morning and I opened Facebook and I was following the SPCA emergency shelter here in Montreal, and there was a photo of a puppy. And this puppy met the criteria that my partner and I had said would need to be met if ever another dog came into our home. And the criteria was had to be female, had to be a rescue. My partner loved Labradors. I love terriers. And I opened the Facebook page, and there is this puppy. She's black. She is a terrier, but she's half lab, and she's at the SPCA. And immediately when I saw the photo, this voice in my mind, this male voice that I've heard many times actually, said, "That's your dog." And I thought, oh shit. I didn't want to get up in I didn't want to get caught up in all this. Long story short, I went to the SPCA. I saw what she was like. I came back the next day to get her. This dog is the greatest being that I have ever been in the presence of. She is love. She's so lovely. She is so obedient. I walk her off leash very often. She just listens, and she is kind, and she is so goofy and so silly. And any of you who know her know this to be true. She just wants love. She just wants to love. And there's so many things that all my dogs have taught me, but specifically Willow, there's so much that she's taught me, and I wanted to sort of go over some of the things that she's taught me. I put this up on social media years ago, just 10 things that Willow has taught me. The first thing that she's taught me, wasting time in front of a mirror isn't an option. Willow does not spend 1 second. I mean, maybe it's a vision thing. Maybe dogs don't see their own reflections. I don't know. I'm sure some of you know. I'm not really that particularly interested. So, I mean, if you feel free to, if you want to let me know, you can let me know. If you don't worry about it. I don't care. Either way, I don't care. But what matters for me is that she walks in front of a mirror and she doesn't even look at it. She doesn't care. Sometimes she'll actually, I do know that she sees reflection, because sometimes I'll speak to her in the reflection of a mirror. But she doesn't look in front of a mirror and think, oh, how's my hair? How am I looking? How are my hips, my shoulders? Is my tail too long? Do I need a haircut? What's that thing on the corner of my snout? She's not doing any of that. And obviously, for us to walk out into the world without having looked at ourselves before to make sure that, we are representing ourselves physically, the way we feel energetically and spiritually, obviously that is somewhat of an ask for most of us. But with that said, consider that we spend too much time in front of a mirror. Consider that the reflection that you see isn't necessarily what other people are going to see. So you're wasting your time anyway. Look in the mirror, give yourself a once-over, and then get on with it. Because we are wasting time picking ourselves apart. You are not your body. We are not the body. Willow is not the body. These animals are the energy in the body. They just happen to have, landed in these beautiful animal shapes. But ultimately, the willowness is her personality. It's her energy. It has nothing to do with the way she looks. So wasting time in front of a mirror is not an option. The second thing I've learned from Willow, there's nothing better than a comfortable couch surrounded by the ones you love. Now, I'm pretty much an introverted person, so give me the option of either staying home with friends, hanging out on a couch, or going out to a party. I will take the couch any day. One of our couches at home is Willow's. That's where she hangs out. And she hangs out there, and she loves it, and she makes it hers. And she's taught me that that's okay. Because there was an early part of me, a younger version of me, who thought I should be more extroverted. I should be that person who goes out, who sees people at parties, who goes out to clubs, all that stuff. And you know what? I'm past it. I've been past it for a long time, but Willow is an amazing reminder that that's okay. She has taught me that fresh snowfall is meant to be played in. Now, I'm not a winter person. I live in Montreal, where winter here is full on Game of Thrones. I'm not a winter person. So she has taught me that snow is meant to be played in. And when she goes outside, she becomes like almost manic. If there's a lot of snow, like let's say feet and feet of snow, she gets into it, like she walks into it, and then she like sticks her head down, and the top of her head becomes almost like a bulldozer, and she starts pushing her way forward and essentially creates like a tunnel in the snow. It's the craziest thing. But she hops around like a reindeer in the snow. She absolutely loves it. And she reminds me that that's also an option for winter. Winter's not meant to be avoided. I mean, the best thing I think about winter is that you can be inside, away from it, and be cozy and be warm, if you're lucky. And so, she's taught me that it's okay to be out in winter. And by the way, years ago, I was teaching a class. I'm going to tell this story. A lot of you have heard of it, or have heard the story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Years ago, when I was teaching at the studio, I was teaching a day class, like an afternoon class. And whenever it was winter, I would constantly talk about the fact, like, hey, we're going to warm up, or it's really cold outside, or, wow, it's like the weather's really extreme, whatever. And at the end of a class, one of the teachers, Freudian slip right there. One of the students came up to me and he said to me, "You don't like winter, do you?" And I said, "No, not at all. I'm always cold. I would much rather be too warm and be able to cool down than to be too cold and have to heat up." And he said to me, "Well, I mean, that like winter's just a state of mind. Cold is just a state of mind. Get like a nice coat, get a big coat, get a hat, get gloves. It's just a state of mind. You can go out into it. You won't even feel it." Now, I'd be lying if I told you that the first thing in my mind that popped up wasn't fuck you. Honestly, the first thing that came up in my mind was, really? Really? You think I don't have a nice coat? You think I haven't worn a hat and gloves? Really? What came out of my mouth was not fuck you. What came out of my mouth was, "Oh, yeah, you know what? That makes total sense. I'll give that a think," and walked away thinking, fuck you. In hindsight, I understand what he meant, that, what you focus on is what is going to be. So if I focus on the crazy heat and dryness of Greece in the winter, yeah, it might help. With that said, our winter is so hardcore that, I'm still practicing and it still isn't working. So whatever. But listen, if it works for him, more power to him. And obviously there's something that he is there to teach me about. But nonetheless, I just wanted to tell you that story because I think it's a good one. The next thing that Willow has taught me, approach everyone as a potential ally and playmate unless your intuition tells you to steer clear. Think about that. There are so many incidences where we approach people with a preconceived notion of who they are, or how things are going to go. Or we think they have an agenda, or we have an agenda. So why not just go into every situation as if whoever we're about to meet is a potential ally and playmate? And listen, if your intuition is like, stay well clear, then stay well clear. Pay attention to that. Willow, I'll bring her to the park, and sometimes she'll be off leash. And she will clock a dog coming towards us who may be 200, 300 meters away, like not close. And she will immediately move. She'll immediately either walk into the park. One time she even went to go cross the street, and I had to like go get her and tell her you can't do that. And I didn't know why she was doing it until I saw this dog walking towards us. And the dog looked nuts, and the owner didn't look like he was all there either. And I just thought, you know what? This dog gets it. This dog has a finely tuned intuition and bullshit meter, and she knows what's happening. So I thought that it was just totally cool that she taught me to, well, reinforced for me to pay attention to my intuition. Another thing that Willow can teach all of us, it's not about what happened 2 seconds ago, and it's not about what might happen in 2 seconds. It's about this second. She is constantly in this second. And if something happened a couple of seconds ago where, I don't know, she bumped into something or somebody accidentally stepped on her tail or whatever, it's done. It's gone. She doesn't sit there for the rest of her life thinking, God, that was so horrible. Did they step on my tail on purpose? She doesn't think about, oh, that dog didn't like me at the park. What does that mean about me? And then go home ruminating over it and then start to fall into anxiety and depression. You know, what separates us from our animals is that we can set a goal and achieve it on our own. Our animals are dependent on us to help them do that if they have the goal. But ultimately, they're very much in this moment. Now, while it's an incredible thing to be able to achieve a goal and to, you know, keep sort of upping the bar for ourselves, if that's what we feel is appropriate for us, the shadow side of that is we also spend way too much time beating ourselves up and sort of railing against everything when that's all wasted time. It's about this second. Be in this second. You have no control over what has happened. It's done. Forget about it. And you think you've got control over what might happen, and you may have influence, but you don't have control. So let shit unroll the way it's going to unroll. Let it unfold the way it's going to unfold. And go with it and respond to it. But it is about this second. Willow has taught me that communication need not occur through spoken language. She gives me a look. Sometimes her ears float out to either side, and I know that she is trying to like peacock a little bit to show me how beautiful she is. Sometimes her ears are way back and her mouth is hanging open and she's literally smiling. There are no words there, but she is communicating emotion. She is communicating what she wants. When she actually gets impatient, when she wants me to hurry up, with one of her back paws, she'll scratch her side. She scratches herself, and I know that she's saying, hurry up. We can communicate with each other without using words. And sometimes that communication means way more than words, because very often words don't do our emotions or what we want to express justice. I've been told by so many people that they'll know how I'm doing based on what my eyes are telling them. And that's something I have no control over. If things are good, they know it. If things are not good, they know it. What she's taught me: one's voice need not be raised unless extraneous circumstances call for it. She taught me that she will pay attention without me having to yell. She's taught me that I can express everything to her in the same tone that I'm expressing this to you. And the only times really now that I raise my voice is when she does something that could be potentially dangerous. And that's when all of a sudden it's beyond my control and it comes out and I yell. But what she's taught me is that it's not necessary in most situations. She's taught me that expressing love never gets tired, because that's all she is, and that's all she wants. And that's all I am, and it's all I want. And so she almost mirrors that back to me, and I mirror it back to her, and she's my girl. 2 more things that she's taught me. Sometimes all it takes is a smile and a lick to excuse laser breath. I'll let that one just sit with you. And the last one, it's okay to fall asleep on your back with your legs splayed wide open. And I'll leave that one with you as well. Listen, I would love to hear about your animals. I'd love to hear about the experiences you have had with your animals who are either still with you or have passed. I want to hear about the connection you have with those beings, because there's a community of us out there in the world, these people who love our animals, almost more than we love people. And I've said it to so many of you before that I trust animals more than I trust people because they're not going to bullshit me. There is no agenda unless, they want to get fed, they want love, they want to play, or they want to sleep. It's all very basic. But share your stories, reach out, let me know. But I really want you to consider the relationship you have with your animals and how important they are to who you are and what they've taught you. And if there's stuff that they've taught you that, you want to share with me and potentially you want me to share with everyone else, let me know. So give it a think. And I'll see you later. This has been the Examine Life with Bram Levinson.